Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Lindsay is still out on PTO, so I guess I will be the MC for this team meeting this week. So let's see, started at the top here. It doesn't look like we have any follow-ups from previous discussions. Anybody have any they want to add at the last second? Looks like not. And I see, Savash, it looks like you were the only one that put something under the demo side, but it's a refactor, nothing visual. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's still the case, exactly.
Cool. Anybody else before we hop down into the planning breakdown? Nope. All right, nice and quiet this week. Okay, let's start on the first one. So this is using the merge base for Security MR widget. This one, just for a little bit of background context, if you haven't gotten a chance to look at it, came out of an evaluation it's almost a year ago on feedback on the MR. The code quality team did something very similar in fixing their diff inside the MR. And this is us sort of taking what that team did and bringing it over for the security widget. And I see one carrot from Alexander, who's not actually working on this right now. Do we want to walk through this at all, or we can do these, of course, async, but I'm happy to go through them if we want to do any Q&A on it. No. Everybody needs a little more coffee.
I checked them today. Most of them were backend issues. So this one.
Yeah, I think they kind of are. I don't think, Savash, on this one, there's going to be really anything different in the UI. This is just going to be what we're servicing in terms of the diff for the MR security widget. I think for this one, whoever looks at this one and does the planning breakdown, it's probably worth reaching out to. Make sure it is linked in here. Yeah, so the code quality group who basically did the pattern, I think that it looks like we want to follow for the diff on this one. Mihao, are you trying to talk to us? Because we're not hearing you.
Is he?
I don't know. I see his lips moving. Maybe he's on a, he's got his Discord up.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Mihao. Is it the next one is also related with like the merge request widgets report?
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, I'm just muttering to myself. I'm not sure what the merge base reference is, but I will. Okay, that's just me needing to investigate this.
Yeah, so I think these are the MRs that were from the code quality team that are related to this. It's I'm not even going to attempt to explain what it is because I can't, but I think it was trying to do a smarter version of looking at the, I guess, the branch history, the git commit history to figure out at which point to do the diff of the default branch versus the current one. And it should make it a little bit more accurate what the user is actually seeing in that MR security widget, what shows up as new or removed.
Would we have to change any of our like error messaging when we talk about like rebasing source branches with troublesome merge requests and whatnot?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, we'll change it on the fly, right? That's okay.
I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my basic understanding of this thing is it's like it's fairly simple where like you said, it's just instead of diffing off the current, we'd have to diff off of whatever the merge base. But would that mean that we would have to run 2 vulnerability reports, one off of the merge base and one off of the merge request?
That is a good point.
Because I mean, with code, it's already there,
Circle here.
and you know that's a little easier than because we don't actually keep the vulnerabilities for each individual commit. So we would just have to rerun it off that commit, right? And then compare the two.
Might be. Now I'm realizing that I don't think I have the thing linked that I wanted to have linked in here. I'll blame Thiago because he's not here and he opened this one.
Here, I'm going to put my question in the issue itself.
Yeah, I need to make sure that the right stuff is linked. It looks like the MRs are linked, but oh no, okay, so it is. It's just not. Oh, because it's an epic and you can't link epics. Okay, so this is where basically it came from. So this is what Thiago was pointing to, that this was, I think, the relevant comment that showed what the update was actually going to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, we can always answer questions in the issue on that one. I will say it looks like this is something that's getting a little bit more attention from outside of our group as well, just because this was an effort to clean up a lot of things in the MR for consistency, and kind of kicked this one down the road for a little while. But I think some of the recent focus on SAS and SAS and all the other acronyms are putting a little bit more attention to this one. So I've got it in 13.12, and it would be a nice one to see if we can't keep, if we need to kick some stuff out to keep it in 13.12. It'd be a good one, unless it's gigantic, which I'm hoping it's not. All right. Take a look at the next one. Actually, I think we can skip looking at this one now. So this one to me seemed like it actually might be very similar, or might even end up being the same thing. So after the first one, it would probably be good to take a peek at the second one to see if it seems like that's actually a duplicate, and then we can close it out. Let me skip down to this next one. I see your note, Savash. So resolved in master status is confusing. I think that it looks like it's a tiny change, and we just need to provide a field that specifies the vulnerability as a duplicate and which one. Does anybody else's GitLab do that to them?
The result in masters, wait, that's 5 months ago? I am not sure. To be honest, to me, this looks like a bug on our end. Because the last time I was working on with Mehmet on the findings, we did a major change in how do we process the reports and how we assign UIDs to them, which ended up making such a flow that it's impossible for us to get duplicates. So at this stage, if we are getting duplicate vulnerabilities, then it means that we have a bug somewhere.
And we're talking about duplicate vulnerabilities across different scanners on this one, right?
In this instance, a duplicate vulnerability only refers to the case when 2 different analyzers detect a finding with the same location identifier.
Yeah.
We shouldn't get those as well. They should be deduplicated by the time they are inserted into the database.
Gotcha.
Mihal, so this issue is from, let's see. Yeah, all the way back at the beginning of October. Do you remember when roughly you and Mehmet did that change? Because maybe this is no longer the case. It's just been around for so long.
Last thing I did with the UIDs and duplicate vulnerabilities was at the end of the was at the beginning of March this year. And last time I checked, Mehmet found some old records which still use the old UID system. So there will be an issue to get rid of those as well, but at least from March, we shouldn't have any duplicate vulnerabilities in the database. It's technically almost impossible for them to get into the database because we have a unique index on the UID, and the UID comes from the location and identifier partly. They are also scoped to a project. So if the primary identifier ID and the project fingerprint is the same and the project ID is the same, you will get the same vulnerability, and our database index will prevent them from being inserted.
Now that makes sense, but that also brings up another question for me. So how is that communicated to the user that we have made that deduplication? So if I was expecting, let's say, the GitLab SAST analyzer and an integrated third party to find the same thing, if I'm in the vulnerability report for that project, am I only going to see one analyzer that's made that detection? And how do we make sure that it's consistent every time I run those two analyzers, that we're not, flipping which one is the, I guess, the persisted record for the duplicate?
I think it's going to. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen if. Well, what would happen? I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but my guess is that whichever report is being parsed first will be persisted. So let's say if you run DAST and SAST scanner at the same time, and whichever ends up being parsed first will be the one that's persisted.
Okay, so would you still see any, so you wouldn't even see any record of those other findings then necessarily, at least not once it's been merged?
Yes,
or if it's on the default branch.
The duplication takes part in two places. The first one is store report service, which basically compares the findings within one report and sees if there are any duplicates. If yes, then it merges them, obviously. But the store report service doesn't discover duplicates from other reports in the same pipeline. And that's when the database UID index comes in. So if you have like two separate reports and two of them have the same vulnerability, but coming from different scanners, only one of them is going to get inserted, the other one will get discarded.
So I think like what Matt was saying there, so if you're expecting a scanner to have these vulnerabilities and you don't see it there, you're going to think there might be something wrong with the scanner.
Yes, I see the problem, but I'm not sure how could we indicate that they are there without inserting duplicates.
An option would be like to put a note in the actual vulnerability. To be able to link one vulnerability to two different scanners.
There is no way to do that.
But there could be.
If we have multiple findings per vulnerability, yes.
Ouch. Ouch.
Starting to feel like one to many again.
Yes, we're back to one to many again.
Well,
currently a vulnerability is linked to the scanner via finding.
Right.
So every finding belongs to a scanner, and a finding can belong to only one scanner. So if we want to have multiple scanners attached to a vulnerability, then we would essentially have to have multiple findings.
And that, I think, was the reason why we originally had thought we were going to do a one-to-many, is because we would have multiple findings per per vulnerability.
That was the original idea, which was abandoned at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we may be getting too far off on this issue.
Yeah, I guess I just want to
Yes.
make sure on one more thing. So because of the deduplication and the diff that happens in the MR, if I were to have both the scanners running, or well, no, I guess that wouldn't happen. If I introduce a new, I guess if it's a new finding, would both scanners show the detection in the MR?
Only one of them is going to show up because we parse the reports before presenting the vulnerability list to the user. So you're going to get only one scanner showing up the vulnerability in the report.
Gotcha. That may just be something, at least for now, if that's not in the documentation, we may need to just make a note about that we're only showing you one instance of the something. But okay, yeah, I don't want to keep going down this path too much more. It seems like I don't think that it's a super common case either. I think people typically are using an existing third-party scanner that they've already got internally and they're paying for, or they're moving over to the GitLab scanners for same type. So, okay, so all that said, this may actually not be an issue anymore because it's looking like I think most of the conversation was quite a bit old and then was sort of between us. Sounds like investigation first, just to see if it's actually something that's still going on. And then this may be a non-issue, which would be cool.
Real quick, I just want to clarify something. So the report, so in the pipeline tab, will there be duplicate vulnerabilities, Michał? In the pipeline tab before it no, okay.
We shouldn't get any duplicates there as well.
Okay.
As long as they are in the same file, the same line, they shouldn't be reported.
Okay.
If you have the same vulnerability in the same file but on different lines, you will get two vulnerabilities.
Right. Okay. But yeah, my question was just that if we don't deduplicate, I was trying to get the sequencing down. If we don't deduplicate until we actually store it in the actual report, and one of them gets dismissed in the pipeline, just how that would sync. But
we will create we will create feedback for that, and if you try to show, if you like try to refresh the security widget on the pipeline, it's going to basically look up any feedbacks for the for the findings and like show them as crossed out when there's a feedback for them that dismisses them. So
okay.
I think that by the time we present the user the vulnerability list on the pipeline widget, we already parsed the report.
All right. Cool. Let's see. We got 10 more minutes, and we got a couple more here. Let's take a look at this one. Jonathan.
All right, I can give a quick rundown of this one. So the issue came in saying that vulnerabilities were not stored in the report until after the pipeline was completed, even though they had a manual step that they basically wanted the vulnerabilities stored in the report before the pipeline's completed because they had a manual step in there. Sebastian made a change. I looked at it. There was something still not quite working right with the pipeline. And so, but when I was talking to him about it yesterday, we were kind of thinking maybe we don't want this at all. To force it to store the reports before the pipeline's complete. Because this is one use case. Like the users have a very specific use case where they want the report stored because they're about to deploy it, where it could be that in any number of things where the vulnerabilities, the security reports run, there's a manual step where they want to like look over the vulnerabilities and then run it again. This one is a very specific one to their use case. and to force this use case on all users, it does kind of break what we have with all of our other pipelines, where we don't actually store anything in the report until the pipeline is complete, which kind of breaks a consistency that we have. And I think one of our values, convention over configuration.
Yeah, there was, so I was actually halfway through typing a comment on the end of this when we started the meeting. Thomas made a really interesting point about a year ago in one of the linked issues. Another reason that we wouldn't necessarily want to do this is if we were to process the vulnerability reports before a successful pipeline completion, what if there were findings that were removed, but then the pipeline failed and is not in a deployable state? The use case that jumps to mind is, let's say that I had a dependency which I saw was vulnerable. I upgrade the dependency, I merge it, I run the pipeline on the default branch. The report goes, yep, vulnerabilities are not there, marks them as resolved, but then the build actually fails because something about the new dependency doesn't work right. I remove it. Now I'm going to get new vulnerabilities where I had them before. So I think it's, I don't want to say it's necessarily dangerous, but it's certainly confusing. So yeah, I agree, Jonathan. I'm wondering, and this may not be how this works at all. I saw, we have all these suggestions down here. Is there a way to, in the manual step, have it include some sort of a CI configuration or a flag that basically says, like, do the thing?
I don't think we have that available to us right now. It'd be something we would have to put in.
Yeah, so that would be like the new feature, is
Yeah,
basically something they could set to say, merge all the results in here or persist all the findings here. And they would have to insert whatever it is before their manual process.
Yeah, and did I actually put that? That's what we were kind of talking about yesterday. Is like have a flag, have something in the stage where, okay, store off the report. If they want to do it that way, I mean, I think that does get to like I mentioned, when we have a failed pipeline, and we have these vulnerability reports stored on a failed pipeline, which it can cause other issues, and then they yell at us because they get yelled at because we have other vulnerabilities that weren't expected. But yeah, to have a stage, to have a flag or something, it would probably be the best way to go on this. But I really don't think we should change the default behavior.
Agree, Jonathan. I reverted the change. And
I saw that, and I just need to go through. I think there was a couple of tests that were failing, so I tried rerunning them. They weren't related to what you had going on, so I was going to check that out this morning.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It's green now.
Okay, cool.
And I appreciate you guys kind of realizing what this was going to do. I'm sorry the work got all the way down the route, but I think it was definitely the right thing to raise the attention on this and pull out the change. Because understanding this more, I agree. Like what the user is asking for is not what I think most people would expect. I would almost venture to say that their process is maybe not the best practice in this case, because they're allowing all these things to keep going through, and they're waiting until just before production deployment to do an audit against things that are already in the default branch, which seems not the right place to do that. So yeah, this has to be something you would have to very specifically configure in.
To me, yeah, like I said, to me, it seems like a workflow issue where having the pipelines run complete, store the vulnerabilities, and then have a separate pipeline if they want to deploy it separately might be the best solution for them. But yeah, that's I'm on the same page there.
Yeah, I think the one question that I had was, so they reference out to, where did he point to it? I keep scrolling through it too much. Oh, maybe it was up at the top. So he did reference this: vulnerabilities reported in the pipeline are not showing up in the security dashboards. I guess I was unclear from kind of following this thread through, and Chiago wasn't actually sure how this works today. If if a pipeline fails on the default branch, do we persist findings or do we not? Because this was reported as a bug, and it was saying that the vulnerabilities reported by the failed default branch pipeline are not showing up in the, well, now called the vulnerability report, which is kind of what I would expect. If the pipeline fails, they shouldn't. And this is not helpful for history. So I don't know what actually changed or what the current behavior is. And I think maybe that's something helpful to inform the conversation first is, if a pipeline fails on the default branch, are we persisting any new vulnerability findings or not?
I don't see any merge requests that actually change this other than one that's written in a different language.
Meaning like Go and not Ruby, or like not English?
like not English, that one that's power price 34, like that's not English and I can't read it. It looks like some kind of Scandinavian language. But this one, yeah, nothing looks like it was done to show the vulnerabilities in the report on a failed pipeline. I think we might have closed this one because we were going to put a flag at the top to indicate that the latest pipeline failed.
Well, and it does that now. That was missing at the time when we went to the standalone vulnerabilities model. So I think that would make more sense. I just wanted to be sure. So I respond back to that customer on that opened the defect to say, look, this is not what it does today.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of explained why we don't feel this is a bug. This is what we were thinking for a new feature, some kind of configuration that you could set, and it would have to come, after your security jobs, but before your manual step.
Yeah. Yeah. So when they were asking for behave similarly to failed pipelines, it does. And that issue does not indicate that there was ever anything that was actually done to change that behavior.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I feel like maybe he was referencing this thinking that the failed pipelines were still merging the results, which would imply that you don't have to have a successful pipeline for that to happen. And that's what he wants, but that's not actually the case. That's what I wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we are out of time.
Yep.
That was a lot of stuff we went through. This one is something I think we can do async. It's really only the first one to look through. Savasha, it's probably going to be of interest to you because there's a lot of front end on that one. And Parent Epic, just for reference, if anybody wants to start putting stuff in there, we've got it for the eventual implementation plan.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else before we close out?
Good.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you,
y'all.
everyone.
Bye
Bye.
bye.